And Carson Price for Wednesday, October 9th, 2024, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. And if you're heading to a game in downtown Vancouver, make a staycation out of it. Book your stay at the Wall Center. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Carson Price rate. Some blackout date supply based on availability. Matt Carson alongside Blake Price. Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson hitting switches, conducting things. And Blake, it is finally here. The day we have been waiting for since the Canucks bowed out to Edmonton in Game 7 of the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. A season starts anew. Canucks and Flames tonight at Rogers Arena.
Yeah, it's been an off season unlike one that we've seen here for the last 10 years anyway, because it was an offseason filled with more than just faint hope or blind hope. There was expectation. There was something there, something to hold on to coming out of last season and into this year. And everybody's moved that bar up. And it's not, we've already covered this. It's not, hey, tell us when the playoffs begin. We remember what those seasons felt like for the Canucks of 2011 and 2012, where we know the playoffs are going to become. I think people do want to see the 82 games. I think people want to see how this plays out. I think they want to know the storylines before the playoffs begin, but they also want to know how the playoffs end. And it's a fun season to be in. Like I remember those 11-12 seasons, Matt. It almost felt like a long slog ahead. You almost looked ahead and you thought, really got to get through 6 months of hockey before we really test this team. This is a fun place where you want to see the 82 games, and then you want to see how they do then, too.
It's been 142 days since we last saw the Vancouver Canucks in a competitive game, Game 7 against the Oilers. First of 82 tonight. We'll get there in a second. First, our poll question. Do you have Stanley Cup expectations for the Canucks? And we're talking about this season. Yes or no. You can vote on the Carson Price X and YouTube channels. Blake Price, lead us off. What'd you vote?
No, don't have Stanley Cup expectations yet. And even going forward, as we prognosticate ahead in years to come, it's going to be interesting because I think you expect, improvement to be somewhat linear, but of course you got that OEL cap hit getting more severe next year as well. But I'll still say that I think they can grow into that expectation for next season. I think we're a year early now.
Yeah, that OEL cap hit, but being absorbed by the increases in the salary cap year to year, which we are now getting back to after several years of flat cap during the pandemic. I voted no as well. I think they're a contender. And we're going to get into some predictions later in the program with regards to points, division finish, and playoff finish. I voted no because, a step up to the conference finals would represent an improvement on last season and would also be a successful season. As we have talked about on this program over the years, unless you're a defending cup champion or a team that's been knocking on the door for several years, if you make the Final Four in a 32-team National Hockey League, that is achievement. That represents a successful season. My Stanley Cup expectations are going to be enhanced next year, the final year of the Thatcher Demko contract, and perhaps a healthier year for Thatcher Demko next season, of course, starting on injured reserve this year. Let's get to our top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits, and Foolish Winery. Drop the puck. The Canucks begin their 55th NHL season versus Calgary at Rogers Arena. And Blake, I was thinking about it. 2 playoff appearances, of course, since the great teams of the Sedins and Luongo and Kessler and Alain Vigneault. The pandemic bubble playoff run was a good one. They won 2 series. They beat the defending Stanley Cup champion St. Louis Blues that year. They got all the way to Game 7 against the Vegas Golden Knights with Thatcher Demko playing the hero in place of an injured Jacob Markstrom. But then they went and lost all those free agents, remember?
Populating the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, exactly. Chris Tanev, Jacob Markstrom, Tyler Toffoli. 2015, they make the Stanley Cup playoffs. They bow out in the first round of the Calgary Flames, despite having home ice advantage in that series. And yet, I think people recognized across the market that that was sort of the last vestiges of their terrific 2-time President's Trophy winning teams. The Sedins were getting older. Bieksa didn't have it anymore, on and on it went.
And they had overachieved in the 82 games. It felt like, you know.
I think you can make the argument that this is the most optimistic this fan base has been since going into the 2012-2013 season. Now, you'll remember the year after the Stanley Cup appearance against the Boston Bruins, the Canucks won the President's Trophy again. They lost in the first round to the LA Kings, but if Daniel Sedin was not right in that series, the victim of the dirty elbow from Duncan Keith. And of course, the Kings went on to romp to the Stanley Cup. I mean, you know, has any team gotten hotter than the Kings were that spring? So I think there was a general consensus in the fan base that, hey, that loss can be explained. We didn't have one of our better players. You know, we played a really good eventual Stanley Cup champion. And of course, the Canucks returned to the playoffs the next year, only to get swept by the San Jose Sharks. That was the day the music died. But going into that year, I still think there was a whole lot of optimism about the Vancouver Canucks. Blake, that was 12 years ago.
Yeah, and I think you could make the argument that people were very scared at the outset of that year that exactly what happened would happen. I mean, I think you push it back to the year before that even.
So the 2011-2012 season.
Where, you know, there was fire in the belly. We were wrong to lose that series. We'll make good this time around.
Yep.
And of course they couldn't.
Well, the head coach has spoke about the season opener, and you know, Rick Tocchet's not a guy who speaks in a lot of cliches. Usually, you generally get the straight goods, the honest truth as he sees it. But
I think he's excited. I think that's what this is.
I think he's worried about too much excitement, and he doesn't want to put a lot of emphasis on the season opener. Take a listen.
Opening night's always great for everybody, so I think you know, from experience, you try to temper it down a little bit because sometimes people get too excited and overzealous. But I do like the jump the last couple of days and the temperament to guys. You know, guys are itching to go, so that's kind of fun. You know, I think every year everybody has the same, you know, mentality. I mean, last year guys, you know, they wanted to have a great start. It's the same thing like this year. It's the same thing, and I think if you just go by game, I know it's a cliche, but if you just have that attitude, I think it's just better. And I think tonight, yeah, it's opening night, but it's Calgary, and we just got to worry about, you know, tonight's game. We'll worry about tomorrow. I think that's the best way to approach these games.
He's almost sounds disappointed in himself in having to drop a cliche.
I think it's words, and I think deep down I hear excitement in him. I think he's raring to go. I think he can't wait to see it go.
Yellow Dog also raring to go. What are they up to this week?
Well,
Blake?
Neighborhood in particular, because they got a big night tonight here. 7 p.m. tonight. Bingo and burritos. Bingo and burritos. If you happen to be in the Okanagan, head to Penticton to Neighborhood Brewing for bingo and burritos. 4 rounds of bingo for free, some amazing prizes, and then the biggest prizes they've ever given away for bingo, so you don't want to miss out. As always, burritos will be $1 off all day long. $1. A single dollars.
I was thinking about this yesterday. Burrito might be my favorite meal.
More than pizza. Burritos.
Yep. Yeah,
surpass
I've made
pizza?
the transition. I'm more burrito than pizza.
You get more variety, perhaps.
Well, I love that's it.
You can stuff it with more things.
It's the variety of flavors within the burrito.
You can go pesto pizza. You can go white pizza.
You can go all sorts of pizza,
Yeah.
but love me a good burrito. And we should tell you, if you're going to the game tonight, you can get some Yellow Dog behind section 101 and section 301 there at the arena. Looking forward to this. Okay. So as for the game itself, Pius Suter is a game time decision. Was back practicing this week. Of course, had a knock earlier in preseason. Was moved back to center ice in place of Aatu Ratu, where he was centering Connor Garland. And it sounds like Garland's good to go, although he did not participate in morning skate. And Nils Höglander on that revamped third line. If Suter can't go, the rookie Aatu Ratu, the training camp and preseason sensation who made this hockey club, this was not a bid that was likely from Ratu at the outset of training camp, and yet here he is on a National Hockey League roster, and perhaps more than likely to be in a National Hockey League lineup for game 1 of 82.
I'm going to make the leap and say they don't even bring it up if they don't think it's happening. I think Aatu Ratu's in. I think Pius Suter's out. There's just no point, if you're particularly a bottom 6 player, in playing through something at this stage. Connor Garland with a little nick, that's different. He's an engine. He's part of the motor that runs this team. Pius Suter isn't quite as integral to the fabric of this team, with all due respect. And I think you're probably better off with 100% Aatu Ratu than a 81% Pius Suter or something to that effect. So I think they don't bring this up unless they're pretty sure that Aatu Ratu's playing.
If you're just joining, you're one of those fans who doesn't pay all that much attention during preseason and training camp, we can tell you that JT Miller is expected to center a line with his old running mate, Brock Besser. Langley's Danton Heinen to play left wing there and make his Vancouver Canucks debut in front of the home faithful. He was asked, Blake, how many tickets did you have to get for this game? And he went, not that many, actually. Family's been longtime season ticket subscribers with the Vancouver Canucks. So well done to the Heinen family. And you let Danton off the hook here. It's not going to be expensive evening for him as he makes his Vancouver Canucks debut. 2 new guys with Elias Pettersson, Jake DeBrusk on the left wing, the big free agent addition from the Boston Bruins, the mercurial Daniel Sprong on right wing. He can really shoot the puck, is known for his goal-scoring touch. We mentioned that third line. Teddy Bluger between Nils Oman and Kiefer Sherwood, another new guy, a free agent addition from the Nashville Predators. Norris Trophy winner Quinn Hughes alongside Philip Roenick on the top defense pair. Carson Soucy with Tyler Myers. And then Derek Forbert with Vincent Desharnais, 2 new additions on that third pair. And they are absolutely gigantic on those bottom 2 pairs.
Oof.
The Vancouver Canucks are Archers Silovs in net. Kevin Lankinen, the backup addition from the Nashville Predators when it became clear that Thatcher Demko wouldn't be ready to start the year. And they'll face Dan Vladar in goal for the Calgary Flames. He gets the nod over the prospect up-and-comer Dustin Wolf.
Their top line with some Vancouver ties as well, because on either side of Nazem Kadri is the former Vancouver Giant, Samuel Honzik, and on the right side, it's Mr.
Kuzmenko, who brings great joy to every...
I think there'll be a sign or two saying hi to Kuzmenko.
And I suspect that Kuzmenko will have some fun in warm-up. I would not be surprised if somebody gets a puck in warm-up. He seemed to love his time here in Vancouver, and the market certainly loved him as well. A joyful young man. Wish him the best, because he was a lot of fun to watch a couple of years ago when he was scoring all those.
Let me ask you
all
this.
Those goals. Plus, he did the Canucks a good turn. He did them a solid in waiving his no trade clause.
Sure.
Remember, to facilitate that trade last year for Elias Lindholm.
Let me ask you this. You got all these newcomers to the lineup, some with local ties, as you mentioned, with Danton Heinen. So I think there's a lot of excitement that needs to be tamped down a little bit, that Rick Tocchet alluded to. What's more likely to happen, though? These new guys shot out of a cannon. So excited. Shot out of a cannon. Or these new guys so wanting to put their best foot forward for coach too. Show coach, I got this system down. Do they just play a more conservative, structured style of hockey tonight?
No.
Or is it loose free will and holy crap, the season's begun?
I think it's the latter. I think that's because of the adrenaline. I think that's often the case when you're playing before 18,000 plus of your faithful.
Mm-hmm.
Also, as we know, defensive structures and systems take some time to gel in the National Hockey League. You certainly see more goals in October than you do later in the calendar. So I think there'll be enough openings out there tonight that, guys are going to sense them, attack them, and I think we're in for an entertaining night with some goals.
And as it pertains to goals, we saw that last night. I mean, the lowest scoring game was a 3-2 game, and the goals came in bunches in the Blues-Kraken game. So, the NHL held form for October on opening night, and I get the feeling there'll be some goals here in this one as well.
JT Miller is appearing in his 800th National Hockey League game tonight. He's got 364 of those games with the Vancouver Canucks, where he is better than a point per game player at 402. He's got 639 points total. Of course, plied his trade for the Tampa Bay Lightning and New York Rangers previous to coming here to Vancouver. Blake, he ranks 14th all-time on the Canucks scoring list, and with a healthy season, he would likely pass Don Lever, Alexander Edler, who will be honored at Friday night's game against Philadelphia, Bo Horvat, Todd Bertuzzi, Tony Tanti, and wait for it, Pavel Bure into 8th place on the Canucks all-time scoring list. And in fact, if he were to outpoint Elias Pettersson by 11 this year, he could move all the way up to 7th on the Canucks all-time scoring list. He's become a leader for this team, and he spoke this morning about playing in his 800th game.
Say what, the older I get, the more I respect guys that can play a long time, and super lucky to, and fortunate, especially health-wise, to play in this many games. And, there was a time 10 or 11 years ago where I was just trying to get in the lineup, and, I feel very, very lucky to be where I'm at, but obviously I've got a lot of help from coaches and stuff along the way. So,
and there's going to be a spotlight on him. I mean, he's 31 years of age now. He'll be 32 by the end of the season. I'm not predicting it's this year. I think he's going to have a good year, but eventually he's going to be old, and I think anytime a guy's 32 and up, people are going to be watching with a curious eyes to when does that guy look old. As I said, I think he's got another couple of years left in him of playing at an elite level. But the radar goes up at this time, and we'll see what kind of start he gets off to. And again, he's already said, my points may go down, but my complete game is not going to go down. He's going to, anytime his points go down, he's going to try to supplement that with better defensive play.
Mm-hmm. Tell me I'm wrong. It's been unusually quiet around Brock Besser this preseason.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of how many times we have put the spot shadow on Brock Besser and tracked him through preseason games, through preseason practices and scrimmages and all of that. Of course, in some cases, that's because he's been returning from injury. In some cases, because that he was coming off an uneven season. Way back when it was the case of what can this rookie do for an encore? Oh my goodness. What a player the Canucks have here. But very quiet this preseason and training camp. I mean, he met the media. He said, I'm free of the blood clot issue that forced him to miss Game 7 against the Oilers.
Thank God, I hope we've heard the last of that.
Yeah, and then sort of just went quietly about his, business. There were no proclamations of this is the year I score 30 or this is the year I score 40, the famous JPAT question. Remind everybody, Besser scored 4 goals against the Oilers last year on opening night, and that chemistry continues between him and JT Miller. So, maybe something you want to take a look at the Bet365 prop menu, Brock Besser.
Also just interesting to see how he does with the lack of the spotlight, with the lack of the question marks. He's had that uber productive season, that career year now. And there's other new guys, shiny objects that are distracting people. Rightly so to some degree, because if you're not worried about Besser, you're questioning now how good is the depth. So all those are real questions and real storylines, and maybe he's able to continue. I mean, I think it's almost unanimous. He will take a step back because he doesn't seem like he's going to be a perennial 40-goal guy. Like that's a high bar. But maybe he's pretty darn close to that if he doesn't have to put up with expectations of himself too, right? Like, I mean, those expectations were also heavy on his own shoulders. He put that on himself too. And I don't think he's necessarily got that. By the way, if you want to weigh in on things like this today, we should mention that. For today, for the next 25 minutes, probably, we've opened up super chats for the first time in our YouTube career. So for those of you watching on super chat on YouTube, you can hit the super chat button and we'll be sure to get to your comments with the super chat. And we're splitting proceeds of that right now with the BC Mental Health Foundation, leading up to our big grand opener party at Greta coming up
on October 19th.
Yeah.
Besser shot 19.6% last year. He's a career shooter in the 13% range. So went over and above by some margin, as a matter of fact, what he had previously done over the totality of his National Hockey League career. That got him up into being a National Hockey League All-Star last year. You may remember, played in the All-Star game. Dakota Joshua, he is not going to play tonight. We anticipate, Darren Dreger told us earlier in the week that he's hearing 3 to 4 weeks on Dakota Joshua as he makes his return from testicular cancer. But Rick Tocchet allowed yesterday he will be skating with the main group soon. He will be joining the Canucks on a road trip through Florida, Philly, and Chicago. They leave on Sunday, so it continues to be good news about Dakota Joshua. Of course, in goal tonight, we have Arturs Silovs as opposed to Thatcher Demko Blake, with Kevin Lankinen backing up. And you have to think that the young Latvian is going to be excited to play on an opening night, having been the Canucks goaltender of record to close out last season in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
And normally a guy with that short of a resume in the regular season, we would be saying, how is he going to, withstand the spotlight of season opening game, home fans? I mean, the guy not only did it for his country at the World Championships, but he's done it in the Stanley Cup playoffs already. I really haven't heard that questioned at all with regards to Arturs Silovs, because he's been baptized by way bigger fires than a 2-point night in October at Rogers Arena. So I don't think that, and I'm not predicting that therefore it's a 45 save shutout. I'm just saying, I don't think that's going to be his undoing here tonight, his nerves. He's proven he can deal with those.
It is his 20th NHL game.
It's crazy. Like, again, if we had any other circumstance, we'd be like, how's this guy going to do it? It's season opening. I think he's going to be okay.
He played 10 games in the Stanley Cup playoffs last year. Tonight, he plays the 10th game of his regular season career. It was 4 games last season, 5 the previous year. And Tocchet has said he quite likes Kevin Lankinen, and that this is not going to be your typical starter backup goaltender arrangement, at least not yet, and particularly because the Vancouver Canucks do not have back-to-back games for some time now. So they don't play back-to-back games till mid-November. So you're not going to have the typical backup starts available to you. So you're going to see Kevin Lankinen. You may see Kevin Lankinen as soon as Friday against the Philadelphia Flyers. Tocchet has said he really likes the way Lankinen moves the puck and thinks it helps their breakouts. In Artie's case, just don't mismanage the puck. And Blake, something you'll be looking for tonight, because I imagine the Calgary Flames, they watch film too. goals from distance. You know, Silovs was so good last year against some of those grade A chances, and when the Oilers were buzzing about his cage, and of course some electric offensive players when we talk about that Edmonton team, and yet it was the occasional shot from distance, particularly if there was any kind of traffic or screening, that caused Silovs trouble. And you know, as everybody said, okay, that was something that was the case in the HL as well from time to time, but of course more pronounced because in the National Hockey League those shots are coming faster, those releases are quicker, got to be a little bit more on your toes. So
I think those kinds of game plans, though, from an opposition team are way more pronounced and more easily executed in the playoffs. Like on a night-to-night basis where teams are moving on from one team to the next. Rarely, especially, you know, on a homestand where a team's on the road, they're not sitting down for a lot of video on the opposition like you are come playoff time. I don't think that's going to necessarily manifest itself too much. And you can bet Archer Silovs was working on that all off season long as well. So, yeah, I mean, people are going to look at it because that became the book on Archer Silovs, but I don't know that we're going to see that so much in the regular season as opposed to a playoff series.
Okay, partner, predictions time. And for those of you in the YouTube stream right now, I suspect you may have a thing or two to say. If you would like it read, the super chat button available to you. We'll get to a couple of those here in a moment. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first, Blake?
You go first. You go first.
Ah, he's such a good guy. So, reminder that this time last year, Canucks president of hockey operations, Jim Rutherford, acknowledged everything has to go right for this team to make the playoffs, and gosh darn it, everything did. They win the Pacific Division, 109 points. They spend the entirety of the NHL season right there at the top of the table. This year, you have the weight of expectations that have arrived. You have optimistic fans. It should be electric right out of the gate. And look, unquestionably, this team is better on the wing, and I think you can argue it's deeper in goal as well. It's the second full season for Rick Tocchet, as JT Miller said this morning. You know, last year we were instituting. This year we're building off that. And as we know, Tocchet and his staff did marvelous work with a number of players who had career seasons, and he won the Jack Adams as NHL Coach of the Year. All that said, I think there are some pitfalls here that make regression more likely than improvement. And there we got to start with Thatcher Demko. It remains a big unknown. And it's not just an unknown with regards to when is he going to return. Drager told us he thinks it's going to be 3 to 4 weeks. Some reports have it later than that. Seems likely he's going to miss the first 7 to 10 games the month of October at the very least. But then he's got to come back and play through this unique muscle injury in the back of his knee that no hockey player has, or at least not recorded. He's got to hold up the season there. So, you know, to me, that's a concern. And of course, the injury concern extends beyond Demko. Their top 7 scorers last year were the picture of good health. Missed virtually no games due to injury. That's not likely to repeat. There is probably a good chance. There is a good chance that they are going to have to make do this year for a period of time without a Miller, without a Pettersson, without a Hughes, without a Roenick, somebody like that. Last year, as we noted, this was a most efficient team, shot 12%. That was second in the National Hockey League. Demko had an extraordinary record, especially before late in the season, stopping those grade A chances. They finished 7th in team save percentage. So I think you can see both of those regress to the mean a little bit. They look weaker on center and on defense right now with the free agent defections of Lindholm and Zadorov to Boston. We do anticipate that management, forever aggressive, is going to improve this club. Can they get their work done early like they did last year? Will it be a little closer to the March trade deadline? And then there's the changes in system that are being employed this year. Tocchet has pledged they're going to be more aggressive Offensively, he wants to generate more chances off the rush. They were the worst team in the NHL last year in terms of generating rush chances. Now, they were exceptionally efficient at finishing those chances, but they didn't generate a lot of them. They also didn't generate a lot of shots on goal last year. Tocchet was big on, hey, keep possession of the puck in the offensive zone until a good shooting opportunity presents itself, because possession works like a defensive tactic. So, how is that going to work? Will that come at the expense of team defense, which really was an underpinning of the Canucks' success last year? Are they trying to forge dual identities here? I think at minimum you can expect that may take a little bit of time. And then you have the division, which at the top I think is the strongest division in hockey, with apologies to the Central. You got the Oilers, who are Stanley Cup betting favorites at Bet365. Of course, they beat the Canucks last year in the playoffs. You got the Vegas Golden Knights. You have the next, the previous champion to Florida. And I think Vegas is going to be very hungry to avenge last season's first-round loss. I think they're going to take the regular season more seriously this year in Vegas and not load guys up on LTIR, putting all their eggs in the first-round basket. I've gone back and forth on where to predict the Canucks in this division. I've considered first through third. Perhaps I'm a little bit scarred by the historic malfortune of this team. Impending doom, as Donnie calls it, Canuck luck. I'm settling on 103 points. Third place in a difficult division, but an improved club at the deadline and a team hitting their stride into the Stanley Cup playoffs. And for that reason, Blake, I've got them going to the conference finals.
It's quite a dissertation. Should have broken that off into a separate show, maybe.
Thought we were explaining ourselves and not just giving the numbers flatly. Want to know where I want people to know where I'm coming from. Okay. I'm happy to listen to your dissertation, Blake.
I was very close to going down that road, but then I just thought, maybe we're just talking ourselves into that, because it's what we in Vancouver tend to do with the Vancouver Canucks, is talk ourselves out of positivity. I think it will be tough to get to 109 points. So I'm not suggesting that. But I look at the division, and I think the floor of the division has gotten better. But the more that I looked at teams like Vegas and LA and Calgary, I just think they're getting older, and I don't think they're getting any better. I don't think they've made concrete improvements to the team that they can bank on reliably throughout the course of 82 games. And I think everybody in the division outside of the Oilers is pretty beatable on a night-to-night basis. So I think the points will be available to the Vancouver Canucks when they're playing these interdivisional games, and ultimately that just will affect what the totals are of those teams and the division standings. I don't think that they can repeat as division champions, but I do think they can get to second rather comfortably. And I don't think that they can get to 109 points on the season, but I do think they can get pretty darn close at 107 points. And a big part of that is, I think that what they did last weekend, getting the Tucker Perlman contract off the books, staying out of LTIR and accruing capital, I think they're going to make sure that, and I think we're all in agreement, this is a better team, and I think demonstrably better team than the team that started last season. And yes, they added Zadorov and Lindholm, but I think they can do something similar again this year, and that will keep them better again on paper than they were at the end of last season. So I think they can do all that, do it earlier maybe even than they did last year. I don't know that they wait till the trade deadline to improve themselves. I think they do so throughout the course of the regular season to make sure those players are up to speed come playoff time. Now, getting through the Oilers is another matter. And come playoff time, I think it's going to be an absolute battle. And I think it goes down to the seventh game again, where the Canucks, like their decade-old predecessors that we have referenced already in the 2011 and 2012 seasons, that core group, they needed a couple of kicks that Chicago can. there's a reason why slaying the dragon was such a big deal, because as good as they were in the 2 years previous to that, they had to find a way over the hump. And I think the dragon becomes an Edmontonian, and this is not the year that they slay it. So 107 points, second in the Pacific, a second round exit. Alas, so we crisscrossed. We had I had a rosier regular season, a more pessimistic playoff, and you were the opposite.
Yeah. Good shout on the Blackhawks 3 years running slay the dragon. That has crossed my mind a lot here when considering the Canucks and Oilers. Crossed my mind at the start of last year's Oilers Canucks series, was front of mind at the end of that Oilers Canucks series, and as I have watched all the predictions and prognostications come on in from people around the league, it seems like a lot of people are of that opinion that the Pacific Division going forward is going to run through Canada, either via Edmonton or via Vancouver, with the Vegas Golden Knights in bronze medal position. We shall see. The one thing that I wonder, Blake, and it was interesting because on Monday, Darren Dreger said to us point blankly, he expects them to acquire a third-line center this season. He thinks they will be shopping for that position. And, of course, they did last year with Elias Lindholm, who is better than a third-line center and gave them terrific depth down the middle with Miller and Pettersson. Now, that does prejudge a little bit. Atu Ratu, we'll see how he does. Maybe as soon as this evening, perhaps he can grow into that role where you feel like you're good there, that you don't want to bump him down to fourth line center, or the flip side that, okay, maybe he's not really ready for prime time there. Perhaps Pius Suter steps up, who knows? But yeah, I can see third line center. And of course we can all see second pair right side defensemen.
Yeah.
We all understand that at 35 now, Tyler Myers would be better off playing in a more limited capacity on the third pair. He had a very good season last year. Can you squeeze one more season of top 4 minutes out of Tyler Myers? We shall see. And of course, third pair left side as well. Forbert is a certain profile of player. It's a more limited profile. It is similar in some ways to Vincent Desharnais, who will be his partner tonight. So do they have the capacity, and is there, Blake, the availability of center and second pair right shot defenseman? I think the right shot defenseman will be there.
I think we can come up with names. But everybody in the league will want to do that. Like a third line center is a pretty freaking great luxury to have.
Oh, especially for playoff teams.
Yeah,
your playoff teams are going to want to be, increasing their depth and their aptitude at center ice. Not to mention the right side defenseman is in demand at every waking hour of the calendar, the scarcest commodity for the National Hockey League GMs. And so you've got to ask yourself.
I mean, those are the two biggest luxury items for a Stanley Cup contending team. How good's your third line center? Because if you've gotten to yourself to a point in the season or in the league where you're being even talked about in these circles, you've probably got a pretty good top 6.
Yep.
You've probably got a pretty good top pairing of defensemen. Yep. But do you have that second pairing right shot guy? Do you have a third? That is the hallmark often of a true contender.
Yeah, you look at the Vegas depth at center ice 2 years ago when they won the Stanley Cup. Blake, going back to the Slay the Dragon years, Dave Boland and the effect that he would have on playoff series as the Blackhawks third line center. So part of my question there is, because I felt like last year Alvin and Rutherford towed the line on going all in, but when push came to shove, didn't. They cited cap space, and that was absolutely a reason, not an excuse. But we heard how aggressive they were all year, and then when they realized what the prices would be to add that next piece that they were looking for, and of course they were looking for the finishing winger and hunting Jake Gensel back then. I think it's a different set of circumstances in terms of the positions and profiles they'll be looking at this season, but they weren't able to get it done. So are they cup or bust? Are they all in this year as a management group? Are Lekramaki, Wielander, first-round picks, future first-round picks. They do have their 2025 first-round picks. Is all of that on the table for them? Is Ratu on the table, right? Like, if he looks like he's going to be a good young player, I'm just wondering about the wherewithal of the management group. Will they be all in this year? Will they look at it in terms of a longer window, as we both have, saying you got Demko under contract for one more year after this one. You got Hughes under contract for one more year after this one, or 2 more years after this one. Both of them are on excellent contracts given the seasons they had and the players they are in the National Hockey League.
The one curiosity for me is they improve this year, because they're going to improve one of those 2 spots, at least, if not both of them. Who are the players that you, the listener/viewer, love that is going to pay the cost there? Because you do have to pay to get that key player back. And,
for sure.
And how all of these players start the season may dictate who's available, who's not, and how that all unfolds. But you do have to give up something to get something.
Yeah, and Blake, we've already talked about. We talked about it at Young Stars when we had the other Western Canadian teams in our midst and had Ryan Pinder on from Barn Burner out of Calgary. The Canucks did a lot of their shopping via the Flames last year. Both Lindholm and Zadorov were courtesy of the Calgary Flames last year. You take a look at the Flames this year, not expected to have the most competitive season. Rasmus Anderson, a right shot defenseman on a good ticket.
Matt, let's jump into the super chat. Okay. The first ever super chat from Mark Dupuis. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Again, we'll split the proceeds with the BC Mental Health Foundation. Rasmus Anderson is a Canuck by the trade deadline. Demko could come back momentarily, and then Mark Stone treatment possibly.
Yes, it is the Canucks' turn to load up LTIR, is it not? This is how it's done to win cups. This is how Tampa taught us. This is what Vegas really tried to teach.
Honestly, getting him alone would not mean cap gymnastics, Rasmus Anderson, because
he's only $4.5 million. We talked about it yesterday. The Canucks, if they continue to accrue cap space as they based on the opening roster, and it will very much change, make no doubt about that, but be looking at a $2.2 million player at the trade deadline. Of course, they could accrue more cap space by doing things like what they did with Mark Friedman. Hey, we're at home. Do we really need to carry eight defensemen? No, send them down to Abbotsford for 5 days, accrue a little bit more cap space. And then, of course, the LTIR option should any of your top players, and yes, Demko would seemingly be a candidate there, given that he is already injured and not going to play games. Yeah, so bottom line, when you do this exercise this early in the season, you are looking at the teams that are in rebuild mode, and you are looking at principally their unrestricted free agents, but also some of their older players, maybe some of their guys who only have 1 year of term left and don't figure to be there when the rebuilding team is getting good and more competitive. So, and remember, cast your gaze at those rebuilding teams, those teams that we don't expect to be good, the San Jose's, the Anaheims, the Chicagos, the Calgarys.
And you can bet Jim Rutherford and Patrick Oveen are on the phone telling those teams that they aren't any good and that they aren't going to make the playoffs. Hey, listen, you're going nowhere. Why don't we do this? One more super chat. Shout out Major Tao. Love the show. You guys are appreciated. Thank you.
Right back at you, Major. Salute. Okay, speaking of predictions. And first of all, Dom Lucian, you're off the hook with Quinn Hughes. Remember last year, Dom caught all sorts of heat from the Athletic.
It's just water under the bridge. Is that what you mean?
For having Quinn Hughes too far down his list of defensemen. Hughes went out and won the Norris Trophy. ESPN preseason predictions on the Norris Trophy. Blake, 23 different ESPN NHL personalities. Not a single solitary vote for Quinn Hughes to repeat as Norris Trophy winner. A lot of Cale Makar there, and we understand Cale Makar is an exceptional young defenseman, a terrific offensive player, and could very easily win another Norris this year. Some have Miro Heiskanen with the Dallas Stars, who is another up and coming. We've talked often here over the last couple of years of the great class of young defensemen who are coming on up, and Heiskanen is one of them. Roman Josi in Nashville. We saw him in the playoffs last year. He tends to put up big point totals while being robust defensively. And then some outlier left field votes for Charlie McAvoy in Boston. Dougie Hamilton. Didn't get that one. Josh Morrissey in Winnipeg.
Now, we have to say, in the last 33 years, one guy has gone back-to-back in the Norris. One guy.
Nick Lidstrom?
Yeah. And he won 6 of 7 at one point. He owned it for a little while.
He lent it out from time to time. Very charitable of him.
But
look,
you just don't do it. Like, history shows us, you just don't go back-to-back with the Norris. You don't.
Well, why not?
I think, Matt, because it is a subjective trophy, unlike an Art Ross or something like that. And there are just so many to choose from that you're just not going to get unanimity that one guy is the best. I mean, I'm almost amazed that as great as Nick Lidstrom was, and I was a massive Nick Lidstrom fan. I'm still amazed that people got together on that.
I'm amazed that 23 different people surveyed the Norris field and went, and not a single one of them voted for Quinn.
I'm amazed by that too. I am amazed.
He is no worse than the second best defenseman in the league.
Yep. Yeah. I mean,
he's got terrific offensive surrounding talent, an awesome an awesome partner on that pairing in Roenick that works so well. He quarterbacks a power play with big time goal scorers. Astonishing to me. If I'm Adam Foote, I print this out and I leave it in Quinn Hughes's locker today. Here you go, kid. They're doubting you.
Now they're
disrespecting you.
Do the same for
the Michael Jordan meme. I took that personally.
Do the same for the division predictions as well.
Yeah, you could with the. Did anybody pick the Canucks?
No.
Okay.
Nobody picked the Canucks. There was a couple outliers. Vegas got one.
Yeah.
The who else got one there? I think the Kings got one.
Really?
Yes.
I said it in my piece. I expect Vegas to have a very good year. Are you with me there, or do you think?
I think they're going to have a good year. If you want me to put a point total on Vegas, I'm going to say 100 points on the nose.
Yeah,
it's a good year.
I think they could even go a little north of that, because I think the one thing that Vegas got away from last year, they disrespected the regular season. And I think when you do that and it goes down the way it did for Vegas last year, sneaking into the playoffs, remember they had to scratch fight Claude again in the playoffs, drawing the top seed, the Dallas Stars, and then losing in the first round. I think that has a way of refocusing you on a game-to-game basis the subsequent year. Of course, it's a recent Cup champion. We talked about them yesterday. Love the defense there. I mean, 1 through 6, I think that's a really, really good group. So, I think Vegas is going to be a handful. And, in terms of Edmonton, I'm just wondering if they go to sleep for a month to 6 weeks like we saw last year, or whether it's going to be a more full-throated effort from the Oilers front to back, particularly since, and this goes for the runner-up as much as the champion. When you play all the way to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final, there tends to be a fatigue factor that hurts you the next season. So, yeah, I think it's going to be very competitive at the top of the Pacific Division. And frankly, I would not be surprised to see the Stanley Cup champion come out of the Pacific
By the
Division.
way, it was right. The ESPN predictions, there's 2 outliers. Tim Cavanaugh had the Golden Knights, and Blake Bolden, new to ESPN, took the Kings. Ryan S. Clark,
our boy,
a turncoat now.
Oh, no. Ryan was the one guy picking big. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, last year in the playoffs, he was the one guy that took the Canucks over the Oilers.
Yeah.
Now, here he is, caving with the masses.
Look, fun night always at opening night, Rogers Arena, and I see some of the new black seats are going in, Blake. These aren't the super duper VIP seats either. This is for the general rank and file.
They look
at Rogers, and they have cup holders as well. did they look a little thin to you
They did.
at first blush?
They looked very economy. Very economy. This is not super economy. You cannot upgrade.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
looked a little flare air.
Yes, exactly. I mean, hey,
Anyways.
they're new. They'll be nice for a couple of years.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Enjoy it while you can.
there you go. Until that cushion wears
Pancakes a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by our friends at Greta Bar. Greta is the place to be this season. And look, you've got a fantastic time of year happening right now. Hockey has started, baseball, football, soccer. We'll have Canucks Army viewing parties there throughout the season. The first one is October 19th. Doors open at 3 p.m. Join us there. Your minutes from the stadium or arena, pre-game, post-game. The street food menu is fantastic. Try the smash burger. And of course, they've got the arcade, a very popular spot, particularly during the intermissions and halftime. Weekly drink specials. Greta Bar, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Greta, let the games begin. We have Patrick Johnston coming up here from the Province and Post Media, Canucks beat writer. He joined us from Rogers Arena. Later in the program, Irfaan Gaffar, the co-host of RinkWide Vancouver, and Jeff Patterson and Irfaan Gaffar will be back at it tonight. If you missed their preseason shows, moments after the game ends, be sure to join RinkWide Vancouver. They've got you covered on post-game. Make sure you subscribe to their assorted channels, YouTube, podcast. Looking forward to another season of Jeff and Irf breaking down the games. Okay, Bet365 time, Blake. Our bets of the day. We're both going on this Canucks Flames game.
Mm-hmm.
What you got?
I think there will be a good effort from the Canucks tonight. I think that they can handle the Flames. I think they will try to live up to the they're not going to score 6, 7, 8, 9. I don't think tonight, but I have pretty good vibes that they're going to score 4 or 5, and I think it's going to be really tough for the Flames to keep up. So I'm comfortable with the spread, and it's pretty decent for a home side favorite team to just give up the 1.5 goals. I mean, even if you thought it was going to be a close game, 3-1 with the old 3-1 with an empty netter would be, I think, bare minimum here for the Canucks. So plus 125 for the Canucks, minus 1.5. That seems very fair.
I like the over tonight between the Canucks and Flames because I typically like overs throughout the NHL schedule.
In October.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I was looking at the over of 6.5 goals, and that's already been bet up. It was at 6, so you're actually getting even money there, plus 100 to take the over. But then I delve in a little deeper. Both teams to score 3 goals pays a plus 175.
So it's the same bet almost, but you get a little more sugar there.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
You got to, both teams have to get to
Yeah.
3 goals, so it's a little less likely.
Yeah.
But I like those in combination. So give me the over. Give me both teams to score 3 or more. Plus 100 on the over, plus 175.
See a 5-3 game, and we're all winners.
Exactly.
5-3 game, both of us.
But honestly, like getting back to the old Daryl Sutter 3-2 league. In October, it is a 5-3 league.
It is.
It's a 5-3 league with an empty netter, right?
Yes, it is.
And then the playoffs, you're hoping for 3-2. It's often 2-1. Anyways, give me the over. Give me each team to score 3. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS when opening that account.
And thanks for the super chats.
Indeed.
We'll do that
First of
again.
many.
Yes.
Patrick Johnston coming up next.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. Patrick Johnston covers the Canucks for the Province and Post Media. He's at Rogers Arena taking in the first morning skate before the season and home opener against the Calgary Flames.
Can you give me a fries
on Wednesday?
Are they making fries yet behind you?
Absolutely.
You can only pick one thing, though.
Oh, okay.
That is one drink, one treat.
Okay,
Dad
okay,
rolls.
Dad.
Dad
Okay,
rolls. Yeah, got it. First things first. Optional morning skate to start the year. Shouldn't this be the one skate where everyone's present and accounted for? Petey and Garland opting out up front, Forbert and Hughes opting out.
Yeah,
on the blue line.
They know what they need to know, I guess. I don't know. I think we all were pleasantly surprised to see JT Miller out there because, he just wants to play the games.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is. I don't know. I mean, everybody prepares in their own way. And I guess those guys just want to sit and think about the game.
And if Garland's a little nicked, probably best that he saves everything that he has for the game and doesn't bother even going for a twirl, correct?
I guess. Yeah. I mean, we don't really know what's there. I mean, my assumption was it was some sort of maybe leg thing. He looked fine on Friday when we saw him before the game.
Yeah.
And just keeping it safe.
Yeah.
Okay. Hit you with the poll question. Do you have Stanley Cup expectations for this club, Patrick?
I have to stick with my negative Nelly reputation. I seem to be developing, so I'm going to say no.
That's not terribly negative.
Care to expand, Patrick?
Well, look how good the team is. The favorites in the division are, and look how good the other two, the least two hot teams in the Central Division are. And I just don't think the Canucks are as good as those teams. I think they're pretty good. I just don't think they're quite there. Listen, things could change, and obviously the trade on the weekend to create the cap space opens the potential to add somebody really interesting at the trade deadline. And so I am ready to change my opinion based on who that person is. But at the moment, I don't see it. I think they need at least another guy on the blue line. I think that's more than anything is the question for me.
What are you excited to see unfurled as early as game number one? Is it the power play? Is it who gets penalty kill assignments? Is it just the chemistry of the top six? What are you most intrigued with tonight?
I think it's the power play. Yeah, I mean it's power play in the top six mix that you just mentioned. Yeah, like I am intrigued to see how it all shakes out as a forward group at 5-on-5. Danton Heinen as a theory, like I said, he is what he certainly looks like what they've wanted Ilya Mikheyev to be. And Jake DeBrusk and Daniel Sprong are much more interesting linemen. Obviously, Kuzmenko was a really interesting linemate for Pettersson that one season. But then last year, PD had no one. And I think, obviously you need the player himself to raise his game, but I think on the whole suffered for it. The number of opportunities he set up for Mikheyev that he couldn't bury. I mean, the idea is that Sprong and DeBrusk are going to bury those chances, and we won't be having the same discussion as we did last year about production. So, and then the power play, obviously. I mean, the power play is kind of everything. They've been a middle of the pack. It was interesting on the weekend looking at the actual reality of talking about Bo Horvat. They were pretty good with Bo Horvat, but they actually roughly have scored at roughly the same rate. What they really need is to become a dominant power play, period. And they have the talent, and they have the tools, and that's just about being consistent. And last year there was too much of the same thing. Being consistent in your finishing, but being dynamic in your approach. And last year they were too much of the same, and they scored okay, but they didn't put them into a new tier. And if you think about it, in the playoffs, if they had a power play that was elite, not just very good, that makes a difference. And that is how the Edmonton Oilers in the end beat the Kings in the first round. As poor as the Kings were, they still kind of battled them to a draw 5-on-5. And it was all about the Oilers being able to score on the power play. And that is the forever lesson. And that's I would like to see how things go here.
Hey, since you're talking special teams there, we were having this discussion yesterday. Lindholm, their top PK used forward last year by time on ice, shorthanded time on ice per game, obviously not there anymore. Joshua, their number 3 guy, who will miss this game and several more as he recovers. Bluger, Oman, Pettersson, Suter were the next guys up, but then there's the newcomers. How do you see the PK units
Well, we assume that Kiefer Sherwood will be in the mix. Jake DeBrusk obviously has a reputation for being a two-way guy. The lesson was it's about what you actually do when you're on the ice, not as much. There are some guys who really shouldn't penalty kill, and one of those guys was Bo Horvat and probably JT Miller. They just don't seem to get it done. But it's being able to keep those cross ice passes down. Think about how badly that went a couple seasons ago. They could not keep the puck from going across the ice. Bruce Boudreau lamented this endlessly. Rick Tocchet has fixed a lot of that. His staff has done a really good job sorting that out. And so if you're looking to get it done, personnel matters, sure, but it's about what you're doing in the moment. And it was a pretty decent group last year. So, and the guys you just mentioned, obviously Dakota Joshua is one of their best penalty killers, but the other guys are pretty good at it, and Pettersson's good at it. The group that's here should be pretty solid. It's just about finding 2% improvement in all areas. That's the difference between great and very good.
Yeah, and should note that both Forbert and Desharnais were heavy PK minute guys on the blue line for Edmonton and Boston last year.
What do you think Artur Silovs' mentality is like going into this? Do you think he's nervous about this and trying to stake the early claim to the throne?
He's a guy that, I think back to that conversation I had with him late in the season where he talked about looking at the fact that he didn't know when the opportunity was going to come, but he always needed to be ready. And now he's one of the guys, but the pressure's on because they signed Kevin Lankinen. And at some point, Patrick Demko is going to come back, and there's going to be a debate over who's going to be the backup and what the fight for starts is going to be. So he is as prepared as anyone will ever be for this scenario. And, he's a guy who believes in himself. Of course he does. He's an NHL goalie. So, yeah, he's a guy that comes into this with the pressure on, with the stakes. He knows what the stakes are. And I don't think there's any reason to think that he won't thrive in that scenario.
So many new wingers here, and wingers sort of, or at least theoretically, in most cases, are reliant on centermen to get them the puck. How quickly do you think the gelling can take place? Because really, you've got a new winger on just about every line, right?
It'll take a while. It's the way kind of preseason spills into the regular season, and we get so focused in on how few preseason games they plan. But the truth is that the first month of the season is teams sorting themselves out, right? Like that's a general rule now. So it won't be until November, I think, that we really get a real sense of what this team is. Obviously, they'd like to start gelling, have the focus already. But the truth is, it's just the reps. You got to get the reps in. You got to go on the road a little bit. That Pittsburgh Penguins game on October 26th, maybe we'll start seeing it by then. That's 2.5 weeks from now. That might be the earliest, but yeah, it's a thing that's been true since the teams were playing 11 preseason games. I've been reading going back and looking at some old past stuff, looking at the 93-94 team, and they started really well, right? But they were taking advantage of teams that were not looking like they pulled themselves together. And of course, that group had been together. So, it's just, there's a constant flux. I don't, if they aren't looking like themselves by the middle of November, then you can start to get worried because, of course, then you're starting to run into American Thanksgiving and the realities of points and all that.
Last question, predictions, buddy. Where points finished in the division and playoffs. How do you see this season going?
Well, it's a 100-point team. I even last year, like for all the kind of skepticism we had out of the box, right? Like the scoring, the goaltending was fantastic. The bounces they were getting was amazing. They were very consistent picking up points all season. So even a slight step back from that, you're still looking at a 100-point team.
Like you mean literally 100 points, like 100, 101?
Well,
that's not a
101.
Yeah.
No, that's give or take. Yeah, if they sit at 95, you're obviously sitting near the edge of the playoffs.
Flirting, yeah.
This team should be solidly in the playoffs. I don't know if they're as good as Edmonton, but they won the division last year. I expect they'll likely finish second, just given I don't expect Edmonton to stumble out of the blocks the way they did last year. I think this is a team that will be in the mix for the division title, but is unlikely to repeat as division champions. But again, 100-point team is a pretty good team, and I think they, like I said, if they make some interesting moves at the deadline, this could be a team to watch in the playoffs. But we're not there yet.
You got work to do. Thank you for this, fella.
Take care, guys.
Let me know if you see any bunting there at Rutgers.
Of course. All right.
It's happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day from Yellow Dog is the Retriever Golden Ale.
Some price from the historic Wall Center. And if you run a restaurant, you probably don't have time for this ad. You're thinking about how to get more orders flowing, new locations opening. You need more customers and keep them coming back. So really, you're already thinking about Square, because Square Restaurant Tech helps more than 400,000 restaurants do all those things and more. So when you're thinking about your restaurant, think bigger and think Square. Go to squareup.com/ca/en/campaign/big INRST to see why Square is big in restaurants. And RinkWide Vancouver is big in post-game, and the co-host Irfaan Gaffar joins us here. He and Jeff Patterson will have you covered moments after the Canucks and Flames finish tonight in the season and home opener at Rogers
Moments
Arena.
after the Canucks go to 1-0 on the season.
That's right.
Irf?
How you doing, Irf?
I'm great. How are we doing? Official start to the hockey season for the Canucks, but last night we got things started in a fun way, didn't we, boys?
Yeah, no,
good vibes.
Caught a couple periods there of the Utah game, and I'll say this: it's got to feel great for Gary Bettman and the league to have no longer have the blight of the Coyotes and have that sort of optimism and enthusiasm,
or the Panthers for that matter, because it was great vibes in Sunrise too.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely, a good opening night for the and a good opening afternoon down the I-5.
Yeah.
In Seattle. All right, Irf, we talk Canucks here, so let's have right at it with the poll question today. Do you have Stanley Cup expectations for the Canucks?
I think Stanley Cup's a bit of a reach, to be completely honest. I think when you look at most analysts and pundits that predict it, it's the Oilers probably coming out of the Western Conference. I think the Canucks, the makeup of this Canucks team is better than it was last season, but they ended their season without their goalie. They are starting their season without their number one goalie. That is the issue for me. It's the health and the question of Thatcher Demko. I mean, Brock Besser obviously didn't play in Game 7. So I don't think that Stanley Cup aspirations should be there for the Vancouver. I mean, they're definitely going to be there. I think we need to temper expectations. I think if we can get to the conference final, I think that's definitely a win. But a lot of people are predicting the Edmonton Oilers, and the Oilers also got better as well.
You think guys like Quinn Hughes and JT Miller are happy with what this management group has given them for this season? Do you think they'll see this as management giving them the tools to succeed?
I think Elias Pettersson is very happy what management has given him this season.
Given him, yes.
For sure, right? I think when you look at JT Miller and Quinn Hughes, they're going to go out and they're going to do exactly what they do. I mean, JT Miller were over 100 points last year. Quinn Hughes, 92 as a defenseman. I mean, he's probably looking to reach 20 goals this season on a personal level for him. But team success is the biggest thing. And when you look at it, guys, this team is better, right? The additions of guys like Jake DeBrusk, of guys like Danton Heinen, Kiefer Sherwood. You look at the two big defensemen on the back end, and Derek Forbort and Vinny Desharnais, right? There's a little bit of added muscle. There's a little bit of toughness, a little more sandpaper to play against going into the playoffs. Dakota Joshua, obviously, it's going to be a little while till he comes back, but then he brings another element to this team. So staying healthy is the number one thing. And for me, and I think everyone has to agree, it's what is the health status of Thatcher Demko come playoff time, and that's going to be the biggest thing.
I like this lineup for the playoffs for sure. The question is, can they get enough points through the 82 games, not to make the playoffs? I think that's probably safe, but to be where they want to be in the top half of the division. I mean, having that beef on the blue line going into the playoffs, great, but can they last night in, night out for the 6 months in between?
Well, I think the biggest thing, if you're asking me, on a wish list for Rick Tocchet, is another top four defenseman at some point, right, during this season, whether they can, acquire that via trade and get creative, or we'll see where they are right around American Thanksgiving. I look at it where teams are at American Thanksgiving, where they're at right around the All-Star break, or I guess the Four Nations break, and the trade deadline. That's kind of, you separate yourself from being a real contender and a real pretender in the National Hockey League. So last year, They got off to this ridiculously good start. They were the best team in the National Hockey League for quite some time. They go out, they acquire a guy like Nikita Zadorov in December. Is if they do go off to a big start, if they do have this the start that they did and do things that they did last season, who's to say that they're not going to go and acquire? Like, if you're Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin, and this team is playing so well for the first few months of the season, you owe it to them to try and put you over the edge and get ahead of the other teams in your division.
Do you think management will approach it like cup or bust? Do you think they'll be all in? Because, as we discussed last year, or if they were kind of all in, they wanted to be all in, didn't really have the cap space to be all in, and stopped short of all in. Do you think everything's on the board in terms of trading top prospects and first round picks to try and get this team over the top?
I do, but I also think you have to be careful with it, right? I think that, your window is definitely open right now. You have your young players signed to long-term contracts and have them locked in for the next few years. You have a goalie that's there for the next couple of years. You got a young up-and-coming goalie that's also there as well. So you also have to be careful, right? Are you going to go and give up a first-rounder pick or a second-round pick or mortgage a prospect for a guy that's a rental that you think is going to put you over the edge? I mean, we saw what happened with, Elias Lindholm, and obviously things in the contract situation didn't work out, but Elias Lindholm ended up being their best player in the playoffs, one of their best players in the playoffs. So I think for the Canucks and their management looking at it now is you go, and if you're able to acquire a guy, hopefully he's got a little bit of term where you can help grow with this team, right? Unless he's some guy that that you're going to get at the deadline that maybe he's not been chasing a cup. Maybe he's a guy that has some experience, but he's on a team that isn't really going to do anything, or a team that's not really going to make the playoffs. You can go ahead and make a move like that. But as far as mortgaging their future to just try and get over the edge, I just think this management team's a lot smarter than that.
Are we their top 7 scorers were perfectly healthy last year. Their team shooting percentage was second best in the league. Their team save percentage was extraordinary as well. Can they count on those things again, or are they likely to get bit by one of those areas this season?
I mean, injuries do happen. It's sports, but they did really, the only injury that really happened that cost the Canucks last season was their goalie, right? To be completely honest. I mean, everyone else was there. Everyone put up career numbers. Everyone was, playing their asses off for the entire season. And you look at it from a standpoint of, can you see a guy like JT Miller going to get over 100 points again? No, but 90 is probably a realistic expectation. Elias Pettersson is probably, with the big contract and all the expectation from him, you expect points from him. You expect 90 points from him. Jake DeBrusk better score 20 goals. You're paying him like a 20, 25 goal scorer, so he better be one of those guys. Danton Heinen is going to play up and down the lineup because he's so versatile. Again, when they made that, when they went and acquired him, I thought that was one of the more underrated moves that they did go. My biggest thing is the defense and goalie, right? I think that those are the things that you have to keep looking back on and that they're going to have to improve on. But you mentioned the top guys being healthy and having career years. I think that we have to temper expectations a little bit because injuries do happen. I mean, not that I'm saying I want anybody to get hurt. You obviously want people to remain healthy and all of that, but they're already behind the 8 ball with their starting goaltender not playing tonight.
It's funny. There was some models that have the Vancouver Canucks at the top of the Pacific Division at the end of the season. But a lot of the surveys have come out from ESPN and Sportsnet, and I don't think I saw a single analyst on the two networks picking the Vancouver Canucks to win the Pacific Division. Trophy prognostications, shutout by everybody. And that's for all the trophies,
including the Norris.
Yes. And as many pointed out, there aren't back-to-back Norris Trophy winners anymore. And that's fine. But I couldn't believe that, nobody chose the Canucks to win the Pacific Division. That seems plausible, if not a guarantee. What do you think? Do the Canucks still have a case to have a chip on their shoulder of disrespect around the league? Can they use that as fuel?
When have the Canucks ever had respect around the National Hockey League, to be completely honest? I mean, you go and look at it. All these analysts and all these pundits that go and make these predictions, they tweet about loving Vancouver whenever they come here, but they really don't care about watching the team otherwise.
2011,
right?
2012, they were always chosen to win the division. I think back
that was
then.
it.
Yeah.
Other than, their teams were really bad after that, but this is a good hockey team. They won the Pacific Division last year. People were scared to play the Vancouver Canucks last season because they were such a good hockey team. I think you got better in this offseason. You have a coaching staff that's been there before. You've got a management team that knows what it takes to win. I think the Canucks can win the Pacific Division. I understand why everyone picking the Edmonton Oilers. You have the two of the 3 or 4 best players in the National Hockey League on your team. That usually helps with the case there. But I think the Canucks have a very good shot to win the Pacific Division. I think for them, you want to be playing your best hockey come March and April. And I think that's the biggest thing for them when you're looking at it from a coaching staff perspective is, heading into the playoff last season, there was so much energy exerted into being that team that was so good and going out and putting all these historic numbers out and all of that maybe they tailed off a little bit just before the playoffs started. So I think when you look at it now, yes, you want to go and compete every single night as hard as you can and all of that, but you need to be hitting your stride in March and April come playoff time.
Where's the RESPECT?
Well, it's true. Do you not blame me?
No, you're quite right. You're quite right. Tocchet.
Yep.
And the emphasis to create more rush chances and more shots on goal by more shot attempts and surrendering possession in the offensive zone. As we know, team defense was the underpinning of their success last year. How long do you think it will take for this group to get comfortable with being a little more aggressive, being a little bit more open in terms of the rush chances and shot attempts in the offensive zone while still maintaining that good team defense that was so key to their success last year?
Well, I think they know what their structure is, right? I think you know how you want to play the game. Now, you're adding an element to it as going to shoot the puck a lot more, which is the name of the game, right? You want to put the puck in the net of the opposing team. Now, you've got a lot of guys that are capable of doing that every single shift. I don't think you wanting to gain entry into the O-zone and just pass the puck around. Shoot it. There were times on that power play where Quinn Hughes would pass it to JT Miller, who would go cross ice to Brock Besser, who would go back to Quinn Hughes, and I think everyone would scream, just shoot the puck. Well, it didn't happen. And I think you're going to see a sense of urgency more to get the puck to the net. You've got guys like Jake DeBrusk who are going to go to the net. You've got JT Miller, who's a guy that can, wreak havoc in front as well, if and when he wants to. Brock's shot, obviously, in the preseason, you saw it's definitely there. Hit a couple posts in the last preseason game. He looks like, he's back and ready to go, also on a contract year. And Elias Pettersson, right? I think that's the big one. Can he get back to that Elias Pettersson where every time that he wound up to take a shot, you thought that it was going to hit the net or hit the back of the net? There were times last season where he was shooting and it was missing the net by 5 feet or wasn't even shooting at all. So you have these guys, the ability to go and do that. Now it's just about executing that plan. And I think that Rick Tocchet did a pretty good job in the preseason of trying to get that and instill it in his players. But I think another thing that was interesting is I heard Patrick Alvin do an interview this morning on one of the local news stations, and he said that our system is so good that even guys that are in the American League, when they get called up, they know exactly the way to play. And I think that that's interesting because of how seamless it's going to be for guys that get called up. So a guy like Achu Ratu, guys like Archie Paynes, where they're not going to come up and play in the NHL and look lost because they already know that the system that Rick Tocchet has implemented.
It feels like they're going to use Abbotsford a little bit more, both in terms of players and in terms of cap, getting some cap fluidity there and cap space when they can. It's funny that it took them this long to do so, but in over 2 different management groups, but it appears this year they might use Abbotsford a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Eric Granstrom's going to be in Abbotsford for a long time. I'll tell you that much. I think that they brought him here for a reason. He's a young up-and-coming defenseman. I know that they want him to work with the Sedin twins a lot. They want him to work with guys like Adam Foote if and when he does get called up, Sergei Gonchar. They definitely see something there. They see some potential. Now, whether that's a 7-8 defenseman, we're going to have to see what happens, or maybe he gets into the lineup, right? I think the experiment with Derek Forbort, they're going to keep a really close eye on that. I thought there were times where he struggled to keep the puck on his stick, for lack of better words, in the preseason, but we're going to just have to wait and see as how the regular season unfolds here.
All right, buddy. Predictions time. What do you think in terms of points, division finish, and playoffs? Where you got them?
I have them winning the Pacific Division. I think that they can do it again. I really do. I've got high hopes for them. I think that, if they can stay healthy, this team is better than it was last season. Ilya Mikheyev isn't an anchor on Elias Pettersson's wing, so you're going to get more points there, and generally you are going to get some more wins. Conference final, I think that should be the goal. I really do. I think that, the mind for the Vancouver Canucks and their staff is obviously a lot higher. The ultimate goal is competing for a Stanley Cup, but I think the conference finals is definitely should be an attainable goal for this group.
Well, you and Jeff will have it tonight. Every opening day, I always think of Jeff Patterson and how giddy he is, Blake. You know how much Jeff loves.
I've already been
game
texting
day.
with him. He's
got
on
his game day.
Yeah.
I feel him reverberating from North Van already. Jeff, RinkWide Vancouver, moments after the final horn tonight. Buddy, thank you for this. Have a fantastic season. We'll catch up here soon.
All right, gentlemen, be well.
It's happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day from Yellow Dog is the Retriever Golden Ale.
Some Price from the Historic Wall Center. You can text us 778-402-9680. Email live at sekeresandprice.com. All of the Great Clips inbox. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
And join us October 19th.
So will this be great?
For our first Canucks Army watch party at Greta Bar YVR, presented by Fountain Tire. Greta, the home for the fans. Doors open at 3 p.m. Puck drops at 4. Tickets going fast. Hit them up, nationgear.ca. And we've got prizes, trivia, and more to keep the energy buzzing all night. And we're doing this in support of the BC Mental Health Foundation. Don't miss out. The biggest kickoff party of the year, and be there. Get your tickets at nationgear.ca. Okay.
See that air hockey table we've been telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I may get on the air hockey. You and I really need a match.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Because it has been a long time since I played air hockey. At one point, played a fair bit of it. I'm hoping it's like riding a bike. That the skills are still there.
I've got a home rink.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm going to need strokes. I found the Donkey Kong touch came back to me.
Oh, that's good.
This summer.
That's good.
I found myself at a Donkey Kong on BC Ferry. So I'm hoping air hockey is the same thing. Okay. Hey, good news from North Surrey and the BC Lions practice facility, because receiver Alexander Hollins, running back David Mackey were both full participants in Lions practice on Tuesday. They were joined by defensive end Pete Robertson and defensive back Jordan Perryman, who have also missed games. Left tackle Jarrell Broxton is on the comeback trail. He was limited in practice, but that's an improvement for him. Canadian defensive back Adrian Green, who had one of the 3 turnovers the Lions forced in that wild fourth quarter Friday against Calgary, also limited with a knee injury. Sadly, Canadian starters Javon Cotoy, the slot back, Tyler Packer, the guard, and American DB Ciante Evans, still no practice there. All of it, of course, leading up to the big showdown in Regina on Saturday. The Lions need to beat the Riders to stay alive for second place in the West and hosting the West Division semifinal for the 3rd year running. And then, of course, you have the big home and season finale next week against the Montreal Alouettes. And they've already opened the upper bowl for that game.
Unless you've got some extenuating circumstance. It's sort of like what I thought about the Whitecaps going into their last match. For the Lions, they've got this game with the right, like, you get what you deserve there, right? Like if you get a win, then you probably deserve to be hosting the West semifinal. If you can't get the win, you probably don't deserve it.
And of course, they don't clinch second with a win in Regina. They would either need to then win the game against Montreal a week from Saturday, the 19th, or watch the Riders lose to Calgary on Saturday, October 26th, the final game of the CFL regular season schedule. BC with the bye in week 21, the final week.
That annoying tie for the Riders.
Yeah, well, there's been a few ties in the CFL this year. Very annoying, but at the very least, it eliminates the tiebreaker, right?
That's true.
So it's a little more clear, at least in that regard. Seahawks offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb, new this year, first year. He led that terrific University of Washington offense last year. He's fallen on his sword down the I-5. He's saying he's got to get running back Kenneth Walker more touches and run the ball more. Seattle is tied with Tennessee for the fewest rushes in the National Football League. They host San Francisco tomorrow in a massive Thursday night football game. They got a 1-game lead on the Niners. They blew a chance to make it a 2-game lead on everybody in the division, or at least on San Francisco and Arizona, by blowing that game against the Giants. Terrific rivalry there. Love it when those two play in prime time. And Blake, they're wearing the throwback royal blue uniforms. Absolutely gorgeous. Looking forward to the football game in Seattle. Whitecaps, of course, have a massive one Sunday against LAFC. It's a 4:30 kickoff. It is a makeup game from earlier in the season against LAFC, and it is effectively a must-win if the Whitecaps want to avoid the wild card round and a single elimination game by finishing either 8th or 9th in the MLS West. We know both teams will be ravaged by international duty defections.
The good news is it's a long week for the Whitecaps, though. So those guys are unavailable, but the ones that are available, they should be in about as good a shape as they've been in since the League's Cup break, effectively, because they have had a tireless schedule. And now they've got an 8-day separation between matches, which probably feels like a month for them. So they've been off the pitch until today. They'll get back at it today, and I'm assuming it will probably start rather light and allow them to grow into the week. They'll train right through to Saturday and then play on Sunday.
Yeah.
So,
and I got to say here, talking a little Whitecaps on the golf course yesterday with some friends, love so much about Vanni Sartini, what he's brought to the club, the culture that he has created there. It's impossible not to like the human being. He brights up your day. But they've got to start playing better footy late in the schedule, Blake. This is the third year in a row where they've played some of their worst soccer, late in the proceedings when it matters most. I mean, it wasn't too long ago where Vanni had that press conference, I believe after the San Jose game, where he said, other than a couple of times, we have not been outplayed this year. We have been the better side consistently.
From that point
and
on.
really from that famous last words,
Yeah.
I'm not sure they've been the better side more than once or twice, if that.
2 years ago, they actually won 3 of their last 4 to just miss the playoffs.
Remember that.
But they had a skid that led into that 3 of 4.
And they blew the final one, right?
Yes,
They had the opportunity to get there, but blew the final one.
Yeah. So their first 2 years of Vanni, remember, he surged them into the playoffs in his first year in the playoffs, and the year that he took over, he surged them and they just missed. So they've been middling, certainly down the stretch, but they need these last 2. They just need these last 2.
Poll question results from Tuesday. We asked you, are the Canucks better on paper than the team that finished last season? Yes or no, Blake? What did the people say?
They said yes.
Indeed. Percentage?
57.
66.
Okay.
Even 2/3 split there. Tom, the people saying no need their head checked by a doctor immediately. We were running McCabe with PDL last season. Even with injuries to Demko and Joshua, we still improved everywhere besides maybe defense. No cups ever. Definitely not. Losing Zadorov and Lindholm, they are definitely worse. It's obvious. They may have gained cap flexibility, but they are definitely not better right now. Smooth Media says nope, but they will get better at the deadline, guaranteed. And Matt says no, largely because Demko and Joshua are not playing, and ideally Susie Myers are your third pair. When everyone is healthy, it's on par due to better winger depth. Sucks to lose Lindholm for his elite PK ability. Here on that. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program and beyond. Colin in planning reminded me when I said, hey, big party in Salt Lake City, and haven't had that sentence uttered before. he reminds me they did host an Olympics once upon a time, of course, 2002. So I guess that was a big party in Salt Lake City. And then Kate Pedersen, former Canucks Rinkside reporter, now down in Utah covering that club, noted that the celly cam there at the Delta Center involved a guy chugging a beer. For all those who think Utah's a dry state.
Apparently, it was nonstop, the chugging of the beer on the big screen and the cams.
Wow.
Yeah. No, things have changed there. I've been there twice now in the last month, and it is
all those Mormons
pretty cool, actually.
Living vicariously through the guy chugging beer on the celly cam.
Mormons are in Provo more. This is what I've learned. I've learned about the neighborhood.
Oh, really? Have you?
South Salt Lake is the Mormon sector.
Got you.
Yeah.
A couple other ones. Should have mentioned we were talking about the venom in that Padres-Dodgers series, and the video emerged yesterday. Not only did you have Dodgers fans throwing balls at Tatis and Profar, the corner outfielders, and the corner outfielders taunting the fans, you had Manny Machado in a war of words with the Dodgers dugout to the point where he took a ball and threw it in the direction of manager Dave Roberts.
On the ground. He rolled it in at high speed.
Well,
but
but I mean, that's, you're taking your practice.
Well, remember, ground though is eye level. For them.
No, but when you're taking your practice grounders there between innings, typically you find a ball boy and throw it in that direction lightly, or you throw it to your own dugout or your own first.
Oh no, he meant to do it.
He absolutely
meant
to do
it.
He.
But I'm saying it wasn't a fastball into the chest.
Yeah. Anyways, another terrific ball game there last night. A grand slam from Teoscar Hernandez, and yet the Padres are able to close out. They retired every batter after the grand slam, so Padres are able to close out. That's a fun series.
It's been good drama. Baseball
really
playoffs have been good.
It really has. And so a slight echoing when we started the show yesterday. That was on me. I had a volume switch turned up. Not on Mike.
You're new here.
Not on Mike Rogerson. He's a 4-time Juno Award winner. He wouldn't
Doesn't
make
make
a mistake like that. That's elementary.
I liked the Elvis slapback gecko.
Did you really?
That was pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for listening and joining us, everybody. Appreciate you connecting and taking some time out of your day to spend with us. We encourage you to subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, YouTube, TikTok, Insta, and Facebook. And, of course, support the community sponsor. We start at 12 noon on many of those platforms now, Pacific time, weekdays. And please do support the community sponsors you hear us telling you about.
Enjoy the game, folks.
And keep it local. Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.